How's everybody? It's just so pink in here, I'd have to say. I was telling everyone as they were coming in, I wish we could either open the roof, like Minute Maid, or we could take everybody outside. If you weren't part of women's small groups when COVID was going on, when we first came back, we tried meeting out in the yard. Was anyone here for that? Were any of you guys here? Oh, it was so much fun out there. We had all the twinkle lights going on. We had chairs. We set up a little platform. We did worship out there. It was really fun. The problem is the weather is just so unpredictable, so we really can't carry on with that, but it was really great. Well, I know you guys really enjoyed the counseling session this week. Did you guys enjoy that? Yeah? Jacob had a lot to learn, I would have to say. The saga is going to continue, but I'm glad you had a great time with that. And I'm going to jump right into our notes because we have so many fun things to do tonight. But you got to listen in on how Jacob and his mother Rebecca manipulated Isaac into giving Jacob the family birthright and the blessing for an ever-loving bowl of beans. I mean, that was really an incredible trade. And really, Jacob and Esau's trade, it was a great example of how no relationships, and you know this, can really flourish or thrive when there's an environment of deception or secrets. If you grew up in a family that there was deception or secrets there, you know that you really can't flourish in that. We also learned how we can all, each and every one of us, can be tempted to manipulate other people's feelings when we're afraid of the outcome, when we're afraid we won't get the response or outcomes that we want. So I hope that we were all more aware this week of our own pull to manipulate others. And then I hope you were able to set boundaries to not be manipulated as well. And as it turned out, think about it. Jacob couldn't really enjoy the blessings that he and his mom were just so desperate to have anyway. It was kind of like he got the house, but then he couldn't really live in it because he had to flee for his life. So a lot transpires after this, but we're going to jump in and go ahead and see how the patterns of this family of origin really continue to turn up in history. So remember, Jacob fled. He went to go work for his uncle Laban for 20 years, which was really, and I want you to underline this word in your notes, it was a detour from his plan. He married Leah, even though he really didn't choose that. And then 14 years later, he married Rachel, who he did choose. And he also married, because it was really weird back then how they did this, he married his concubines Bilhah and Zilpah. Those are some names for you. And then he had 13 children among them. So he was very busy, and he finally returned home after Esau forgave him. So the saga continues, but it's quite the, underline it again, it's quite the detour, and there's more in the family to come. Now, I don't know how you feel about detours, but they're just not my favorite. I remember one time I was flying from here, I was going through the Denver airport on my way to San Francisco. My plane was super late getting out, so I got to Denver late, and you have to take a train in Denver to get to the other terminal. It's a really fun train, though. It kind of has a Disney-esque feel to it. It has a fun little song that plays and everything. So I was supposed to take out of gate 42 in Terminal B, so I jump on the train stops, I get off, I run to gate 42, and it says Salt Lake City, and I'm so confused. So I show my ticket to the gate agent there, and she just looks at me and goes, this is C42. So I'm totally in the wrong terminal. Now I got to go all the way back, get to the train. I finally get to my gate. The plane's pulled back. They're heading down the runway, and I got there super late. But when I say the word like detour or misconnections or route changes or bad weather or flight delay, it's like my back gets really tight. I don't know if it happens to you. But as we said in the beginning of our Unexpected series, that life typically takes us on those detours rather than a straight line to our destinations. Isn't it true? I mean, we rarely go from A to B and then a straight shot down to Z. It's like we go from A to R to Y, back to C. It's a circuitous route. And the thing is, most of us really didn't sign up for the detour part, whether those detours are our own doing, like Jacob's was, or not. And I don't know about you, the same thing is true when I see a detour sign. It's like my typical response to that isn't like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, a detour. I mean, my response is, oh, a detour, what's going to happen? And yet it would be super ridiculous for us to just sit there and stare at the sign and stubbornly refuse to move and just go nowhere. I mean, something has to happen for us to move forward through the detour. And the Bible says it's full of stories of people who had amazing, great destinies, but had to travel through more than a few detours to get there. And Jacob, he had a son named Joseph, who's just another great picture of what that looks like. So are you ready? Here we go. We're going to dive in. Genesis 37. So Jacob settled again in the land of Canaan, where his father lived as a foreigner. And this is the account of Jacob and his family. When Joseph, Jacob's son through Rachel, was 17 years old, he often tended his father's flocks. He worked for his half-brothers, the sons of his father's wives Bilhah and Zilpah. But Joseph reported to his father some of the bad things his brothers were doing. And Jacob, loved Joseph more than any of his other children because Joseph had been born to him in his old age. So when we first meet Joseph, he's 17 years old. He's a teenager. And unfortunately, we know that Jacob played favorites like his parents did. And then he picked Joseph as his favorite son. So we already have this generational dysfunction continuing here. And we also get our first picture of how Joseph related to his siblings in verse 2, where it says essentially that he tattled on him. He's a tattletale, and it gets better. So one day, Jacob had a special gift made for Joseph, a beautiful coat. We heard about this in counseling. But his brothers hated Joseph because their father loved him more than the rest of them. They couldn't even say a kind word to him. So, there's no way this is going to go well. I mean, this is the coat of many colors that Jacob gave him. And this presented an even bigger problem because remember, it was the firstborn that was supposed to get the robe along with all those firstborn blessings and the birthrights. And Joseph, he's coming in at number 11 in the birth order. So it's pretty much downhill from there. And we pick it up in 37:5. So one night, Joseph had a dream, and when he told his brothers about it, well, they just hated him more than ever. Listen to this dream, he said. We were out in the field tying up bundles of grain. Suddenly, my bundles stood up, and your measly bundles all gathered around and bowed low before mine. So remember he shared about this dream thing in counseling? His brothers responded, oh, so you think you'll be our king, do you? Do you actually think you'll reign over us? And they hated him all the more because of his dreams and the way he talked about them. Soon Joseph had another dream, and again he told his brothers about it. A lot of sharing going on here. Hey, listen, guys, I've had another dream, he said. The sun, the moon, 11 stars bowed low before me. Wow. This time he told the dream to his father as well as his brothers, but his father scolded him. Well, what kind of dream is that? Well, your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow to the ground before you. But while his brothers were jealous of Joseph, his father wondered, so what do these dreams really mean? So Joseph's brothers, they're already jealous and resentful because of the coat situation. And now he drops this big old dream on them where in the future they're going to bow down to him. And then he has a second dream where the whole universe bows down to him. So I don't know, this kid needed to stay up more or something and not sleep. But he's made several critical mistakes, hasn't he? He's tattled. He's told his dreams totally to the wrong people. He should have gone back to his counselor with that. He can't keep his mouth shut. His timing is really terrible. Now, Joseph did have the gift of interpreting dreams, which serves him later. But what we know right now is that he's very short on wisdom at this stage because part of wisdom, it's the ability to know when and what to share with whom. Isn't that true? So God has some work to do with him before he could step into some of these things that he's dreaming about. So he definitely, I would say, needed a few detours to mature him for what was ahead. And on top of that, he's just going around prancing around in his fancy coat everywhere. 37:14. "Go and see how your brothers and the flocks are getting along," Jacob said. "Then come back and bring me a report." So Jacob sent him on his way, and Joseph traveled to Shechem from their home in the valley of Hebron. When Joseph's brothers saw him coming, they recognized him in the distance, probably because of his bright, fancy coat he had on. And as he approached, they made plans to kill him. "Well, here comes the dreamer," they said. A lot of sarcasm in the Bible. "Come on, let's kill him and throw him into one of the cisterns. We can tell our father a wild animal is eating him." More deception. "Then we'll see what becomes of his dreams." But when Reuben heard of their scheme, he came to Joseph's rescue. "Well, let's not kill him," he said. "Why should we shed any blood? Let's just throw him into the empty cistern in the wilderness, and then he'll die without our laying our hands on him." So don't you think that's the same thing, right? They're still going to kill him. Anyway, now Reuben was secretly planning to rescue Joseph and return him to his father. But when Joseph arrived, his brothers ripped off the beautiful coat he was wearing. They grabbed him, they threw him in the cistern. Now the cistern was empty, there was no water in it, but then, just as they were sitting down to eat, which I think is amazing, they looked up and saw a caravan of camels in the distance coming toward them, and it was a group of Ishmaelite traders taking a load of gum and balm and aromatic resin from Gilead down to Egypt. So the brothers obviously haven't gotten over their resentment. They strip him of his precious coat that he's been hiding behind this coat. And I think detours have a way of doing that, don't they? You know, of stripping it away. They often expose what's going on underneath. And then, of course, they threw him in the pit. Well, Judah said to his brothers, "What are we going to gain by killing our brother? We'd have to cover up the crime." Not that they're not good at that. "But instead of hurting him, let's sell him to the Ishmaelite traders. After all, he's our brother. He's our own flesh and blood." And his brothers agreed. So when the Ishmaelites, who were Midianite traders, came by, Joseph's brothers pulled him out of the cistern, and they sold him to them for 20 pieces of silver. And the traders took him to Egypt. Sometime later, Reuben returned to get Joseph out of the cistern, and when he discovered that Joseph was missing, he tore his clothes in grief. And he went back to his brothers and lamented, "The boy is gone. What will I do now?" Then the brothers killed a young goat, dipped Joseph's robe in the blood, and they sent the beautiful robe to their father with a message, "Look what we found. Doesn't this robe belong to your son?" Interesting. Their father recognized it immediately, of course. "Yes," he said, "it's my son's robe. A wild animal must have eaten him." Joseph has clearly been torn to pieces, and then Jacob tore his clothes, dressed himself in burlap. He mourned deeply for his son for a long time. His family all tried to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. "I will go to my grave mourning for my son," he would say, and then he would weep. Meanwhile, the Midianite traders arrived in Egypt, where they sold Joseph to Potiphar, underline this, an officer of Pharaoh. This is super important to the story, the king of Egypt. Now, Potiphar was the captain of the palace guard. So, although he's still alive, I mean, really, Joseph's situation, it's gone from bad to worse here. But note that when Joseph got to Egypt, he wasn't sold to just anyone. You know, he just happened to be sold to Potiphar, who just happened to be the captain of the palace guard. So the thing is, God is already at work with Joseph in the plans that he has for him. And he's going to use this being put in a pit and sold as a slave and brought to Egypt for a higher purpose and really for a greater story that he's writing. He's also going to use this detour to grow his character, which obviously need a little bit of work along the way. And the thing about detours is that they often reveal what's really inside of us, and they challenge us to grow, yeah? And Joseph begins to do just that. Genesis 39. When Joseph was taken to Egypt by the Ishmaelite traders, he was purchased by Potiphar, an Egyptian officer. Potiphar was captain of the guard for Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. Underline this. And the Lord was with Joseph. So he succeeded in everything he did as he served in the home of his Egyptian master. Potiphar noticed this and realized that what? The Lord was with Joseph, underline it again, giving him success in everything he did. This pleased Potiphar, who he soon made Joseph his personal attendant. He put him in charge of his entire household and everything he owned. So much trust here. From the day Joseph was put in charge of his master's household and property, the Lord began to bless Potiphar's household for Joseph's sake. All of his household affairs ran smoothly. His crops and livestock flourished. Interesting word. So Potiphar gave Joseph complete administrative responsibility over everything that he owned. That's amazing. With Joseph there, he didn't worry about a thing except what kind of food to eat. Now, these are first world problems, right, that he has. But I really love, you guys, how verse 2 reminds us again that the Lord was with Joseph in the pit, out of the pit, and now as a slave. Because, and I want you to underline this, if you're on a detour and you know God is with you, it makes whatever happens along the way on the detour purposeful beyond the circumstance itself. It makes whatever happens along the way purposeful beyond the circumstance itself. So as Joseph continues to grow now in character, he's rewarded by Potiphar. And as a slave, God allows him to learn how to develop his capacity and his skills so that later he can assume an even greater responsibility and position. So he didn't have all of the details of where God was taking him, but his real aim for excellence gave him the opportunity to learn the skills he would need later as a ruler. And this is such a good reminder, isn't it? For us to always be looking for the hand of God, even when it's coming through the hand of man. Such a good reminder. But of course now Satan loves to jump in. He's got a curveball for Joseph, and this time it's in the form of another kind of temptation. So here we go, verse 6. So Joseph was a haughty. Joseph, it says, was very handsome. He's a well-built young man, and so was Potiphar's wife. And Potiphar's wife soon began to look at him lustfully. She's very direct. Come and sleep with me, she demanded, but Joseph refused. Look, he told her, my master trusts me with everything in this entire household. No one here has more authority than I do. He's held back nothing from me except you, because you're, his wife. So how could I do such a wicked thing? It would be a great sin against God. But she kept putting pressure on Joseph day after day, but he refused to sleep with her, and he kept out of her way as much as possible. One day, however, when no one else was around, he went in to do his work. And this woman, she is direct and she is relentless. She grabbed him by his cloak, demanding, come on, sleep with me. Well, Joseph tore himself away, but he left his cloak in her hand as he ran from the house. When she saw that he was holding his cloak and he'd fled, she called out to her servants, and soon all the men came running. Look, she said, my husband brought this Hebrew slave here to make fools of us, and he came in my room to rape me, but I screamed. And when he heard me scream, he ran outside and got away, but he left his cloak behind with me. And she kept the cloak with her until her husband came home, and then she told him her big fat story. That Hebrew slave you brought in our house tried to come in and fool around with me, she said, but when I screamed, he ran outside, leaving his cloak with me. And Potiphar was furious when he heard his wife's story and how Joseph had treated her, so he took Joseph, he threw him in the prison where the king's prisoners were held, and there he remained. Wow. So this is awesome. Now he's fired. His reputation is ruined. He's in a foreign country, not only as a slave, but now he's a prisoner. This doesn't bode well. And have you ever had someone lie about you? Yeah. Or twist something you said so you came out the bad guy and there's really no way to set the record straight? It's so painful. I think that's happened to all of us. But even though Joseph's blame list, it's getting bigger and bigger, you never hear him really go there. I mean, not with his dad or his brothers or even Mrs. Potiphar. Verse 21. What's it say? Underline it. But the Lord was with Joseph in the prison and showed him his faithful love. And the Lord made Joseph a favorite with the prison warden. And before long, the warden put Joseph in charge of all the other prisoners and over everything that happened in the prison. He's a natural leader, yeah? The warden had no more worries because Joseph took care of everything. It doesn't say, and all he had to worry about was what he was going to eat. But anyway, the Lord was with him and caused everything he did to succeed. So now Joseph, he gets a promotion, but it's in jail of all places. And God just continues to show him his presence really in the middle of a situation he isn't really ready to take him out of at this point. And in Psalm 105:19, we get a glimpse into what this is really all about. It says this: until the time that his word came to pass, until it was fulfilled, the Lord was doing what? The word of the Lord, I love that, refined him. So basically, God is using all of these detours to refine Joseph. And this is important, and I want you to underline this, because sometimes I think we view God's presence based on his removal of the detour rather than his presence on the detour with us. I think sometimes we view God's presence based on his removal of the detour rather than his presence on that detour with us. And I love how Joseph, it didn't let his circumstances affect his relationship with God. He's really not jaded. He didn't pull away. Instead, he was drawing near, pulling near. And we're also seeing how training for these greater things that God has for us, it really takes place in all of the day-to-day and the lesser things. And I don't see him blaming here either. I think one of the obstacles that I think is one of the greatest ones to our personal growth and really the growth in our faith is that when something goes wrong, we're so quick to focus on who we're going to blame for the detour. We're just so defensive. So we try and focus on that thing or that person so we don't have to look inside and see what's really going on in there or how we could grow. And I think one of the toughest challenges to our contentment in a detour as we're going along a detour, and then our trust in his presence in the detour is when we suffer, when we've actually done nothing wrong. You're going to talk about that in your groups today, because I think it tests both our character and our resolve, our resilience as women to the max, isn't it? I think one of the greatest offenses we feel as women and really as humans in general is betrayal, isn't it? It's a tough one, and I think we've all been betrayed at some point in our lives by someone, and we have probably all betrayed someone also. So you have a lot of things to talk about in your groups. What I want you to do is first start by assembling your hygiene bags. So just put them in the bags. There's tubs up here in the front that you can drop them in once you've got them all assembled. If you have extras, you can take them on to the back to Kaylin. If you're missing something, then maybe you can find your missing pieces with Kaylin as well. So hopefully we'll be able to make them up. It's great, you guys. We had so many tubs of hygiene bags for the guys this morning. Also, there's a blank white card on your table. So the purpose of that card is to write a note to the inmate, and I've given you some verses in your notes, so you can use those verses as encouragement. Please sign your name, but don't sign your last name. But it's so valuable to them to get a personal note. So maybe a little personal note, a verse, put it in the bag. I know the notes aren't really pretty, the white cardstock, but in the prisons right now, you're not allowed to bring pretty things in. You can't bring colored paper, you can't bring cards or anything, so all we can do is the white. So that's why that's there. So do that, answer your questions. There's a survey in the back too that we'll get to in just a little bit. And y'all have fun with that. All righty. So I have a couple things for you guys that are fun. One is there's a card on your table that you should have gotten. And on one side, if you haven't been baptized as an adult, I want to invite you to do that. It's coming up on November the 13th. So you can see me afterwards. You can scan the QR code and sign up. But I really want to encourage you to get baptized this season. And we'd be so delighted to be there to celebrate that with you. And then on the other side, we're going to have a 2-week, we're going to do a little trial thing here, women's yoga group. Where's Laura Timmons? Stand up, Laura. Do a yoga pose. No, just kidding. That's so awkward. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I even said that. Anyway, Laura's going to do super advanced yoga. Is that true? No, she's going to do beginner yoga for us, you guys. It's going to be so much fun. I know, she's amazing. She can do so many things. So sign up for beginner yoga with Laura. We should have just called it yoga with Laura. That would have been better. Anyway, sign up for that. I think it'll be a super fun finish to women's small group. So that would be an amazing thing too. I hope you did your surveys and you put them in the middle of your tables. So now I wanted to share just a couple things with you. We do a pink out every semester in October just to honor and come beside and pray for and champion our family members, our friends, coworkers, our sisters in this room. We've had many, many women in this room fight the battle with breast cancer. My daughter, Michelle, my oldest daughter, when she was a young, very young single mama, fought breast cancer. It was shocking. We just couldn't believe it. It was stage 3. It was very advanced. It was not a good prognosis for her. She had 17 rounds of chemo. She had 30 days of radiation. She had a double mastectomy. She was so incredible. I cannot tell you how sick she was with a young daughter. One of the great things that did happen during that season is that her doctor encouraged her to apply for a scholarship at the Lance Armstrong Foundation in Austin. They have a scholarship for young women who get cancer and have to go through chemo, and they'll pull their eggs for them because it really destroys everything, and they'll tell you that you won't be able to have children. So she did apply for that. She got the scholarship, and they did pull her eggs. And so I wanted to show you a couple pictures today because since that time, she's gotten married. Do we have those? Yeah. So Alexander there, the little boy, they gave her, that's one of her embryos that was pulled. It turned into a sweet little guy. And they gave her a 13% chance that would work. And she just a couple weeks ago had these twin baby girls, and they gave her a 3% on that egg. So obviously God, did some amazing things. And here's what I know. That may not be your story. And I want you to know I totally get that. It doesn't always come out like this. Right? I lost twin baby boys, and so I know it doesn't always turn out like Michelle's story, but I thought I'd share that with you. It's been a great encouragement in our family just to see what God has done. Sometime I'll tell you the story of Michelle and her husband and how that all worked out. And that oldest one, that's my granddaughter, Tira, who's getting ready to graduate from high school this year. So I was super excited. She's extra special. So anyway, so much love. So what we're going to do is we're going to all stand up. Don't do it yet. And then we're going to go to the middle of the room. So we're going to squinch up from here all the way towards the booth in the middle of the room, stand together. If you're in a fight right now with breast cancer, or someone in your family or one of your close friends is, I'd love for you to come to the middle with me because I have a family member right now who's in a fight with breast cancer. And then we're going to just kind of champion together, take a picture, and we're going to pray. Are you good? So, and then we'll close. So ready, set, go. This side of the room needs to come to the middle, and you guys make room for them. We're trying to get everybody in the picture is the reason for that. Are we good up? Lisa, are we good? Kent, are we in the shot? Okay, here we go. Ready, everybody? Cheering them on right here. Hands up, everybody. Strong together right here. Hey, let's pray, you guys, before we go. God, we lift up our sisters. We take each and every one of these women. We don't know all their faces, all their names, but we know the battle and the journey that they're on, that you promised to never leave us or forsake us, that you promised that your arms are never too short. And I know every woman who gets on this journey wasn't the one they were planning or hoping or wanting or expecting. That C word, it's a big word. It takes your breath away. And so I pray for encouragement, strength, hope. I pray that your Holy Spirit would minister ever so softly and yet ever so strongly in hearts, in the minds and the spirits. That these friends and family members and women in this room would know that how you created them from the top of their head to the bottom of their feet, and how you adore them and you smile when you think of them, and that you're with them on the journey. And may we be good friends and sisters and moms and daughters and neighbors and co-workers, great encouragers. In Jesus' name, amen. Love you guys.
Amen.